Today's video is sponsored by Virtual Shield, the best and most trusted VPN service in the world. If you're looking for online security for your office, home, or family computers, Virtual Shield has got you covered. Remember, you have the right to remain private. For as low as $6 a month, you too can browse the web safely and anonymously. Check out Virtual Shield today and use the code NOBS for an additional discount. Link in the description below. Hello and welcome back to No Bullshit. Today we're returning to our ongoing coverage of MTV Decoded, hosted by Francesca Ramsey. This video from them is called MTV Decoded, Colorism in the Latinx Community. Let's check it out.
Why would black people in Brazil get upset about a black woman winning a beauty contest? The answer ends with ism, but probably not the one you think.
I got a sneaking suspicion you're not calling this the obvious racism because it's non-white people doing it. You see, to Franny, everything a white person does is because of racism, even if they're just going to work, eating lunch, or minding their own business. That's racist to MTV, if you're a white person. But when minorities do something undeniably racist, like attacking a beauty pageant winner because of their race, that gets excused here by these radical leftists. They even make up a new fancy euphemistic word for it, colorism, because colorism certainly sounds better than racism, and Franny's got to protect her fellow people of color.
Today we're talking about a mode of discrimination that predominantly impacts people of color, and you might be surprised hearing this from me, but this episode's not about racism.
Ooh, look, she even said people of color herself there. Hate that term. Anyway, even Francesca here knows her shtick is getting old. But even though this was said as a self-deprecating joke, it still holds true. Franny is still continuing to make everything about race and racism, and somehow she thinks calling herself out on it now excuses this shallow behavior, but I say it doesn't. Not at all. And the joke's not funny. Regardless of what's said here, Francesca is still a race hustler who baits both sides into conflict in order to get herself views. All the while, she's constantly shitting on white people.
I'm talking about colorism. First, let's be clear about what the word colorism actually means. Colorism is not synonymous with racism. It's a form of discrimination based on skin color.
Wait, what? She's saying colorism is not racism? It just has the same definition, that's all. Well, I'm not buying that for 1 minute.
And before you're like, wait, isn't that like the literal definition of racism? Hold on to your social constructs because we're gonna knock a few down.
Franny, don't talk like that. Don't try and do voices and quit with the fancy animations too. Colorism has the same definition as racism. That means it's a form of racism. You're just trying to church it up with your stupid made up word, which is something MTV and other SJWs love doing, of course. So we shouldn't be surprised. I mean, look at the title of this video again. It's got two made up words in it, colorism and Latinx.
And today we've got a special guest to help us with this demolition project. Hey Lee, let's break this one down.
Claro que sí. As a Latino of color, colorism is something I'm all too familiar with.
What was that?
Claro que sí.
Claro que sí.
Oh, he's speaking Spanish. Okay, I get it. He's the down hip Mexican. Not a great start though, since I could barely understand what you're saying, even in Spanish terms. But let's be fair, let's go ahead and give this man bun wearing Latino a chance here.
Racism involves discrimination based on things such as skin color, but it's also dependent on power dynamics that become perpetuated by years of structural oppression.
No, it's not. That's the stupid made-up definition of racism SJWs like you and Franny use. They like to add in this systems of power bit so they can say minorities aren't racist. White people have always been in power after all, so they're the only ones who can be racist, according to them. Pretty convenient for these black and brown race baiters to say, don't you think?
Black and Latino men getting longer sentences for the same crime as white men? Racism. Black and Latino aunts telling you to date light-skinned men? Colorism.
Or you can just put it this way to make things easier. If a white person does anything, it's racism. Even if they're just scratching their ass, lying on the couch, watching Netflix. That's racist because they're white. But if a black or brown person discriminates based on race, that's colorism. Despite it being perfectly in line with the textbook definition of racism, it's not, because minorities can do no wrong, according to MTV. Got it? Great, moving on.
Because we often conflate race with skin color, sometimes distinguishing between colorism and racism can get tricky, particularly in Latin American communities, where someone's heritage might include a combination of indigenous, black, and white European ancestry. And let me give you a hint, it usually doesn't get better the darker you are. Unless you're Big Papi.
Well, you should be doing fine then, guy. You're whiter than I am. Looking like the Sean King of brown people today. Yeah, no way these two guys are white. Not a chance. And how come all these wannabe minorities always have creepy facial hair? I don't get it.
The start of colorism we recognize in Latin America today likely began when the Spanish brought a European caste system to the Americas.
That's an interesting animation. White Europeans sailing in on a boat that's labeled racism 4 times. Real subtle, MTV, and I still don't get why it's not colorism when white people do it. I feel like you could easily say the same things about what white people say, like if they told their kids to date other white people. I mean, if we were being honest with this definition, that would mean that's colorism if whites did it too. But we all know Franny and MTV would say it's racist because it's white people. White people can't tell their kids to date other white people. That's racist. But if black people tell their kids to date a certain race, it's colorism for some reason.
Illustrations from Mexico in the 1700s depict classifications for individuals based on their gender, race, skin color, or place of birth. And while this era generated terms like mestizo meant to refer to mixed race individuals, these hierarchies set the groundwork for associating whiteness with power and desirability.
Here's the thing, bro. It wasn't this class system and institutional racism that made the Spanish or other Europeans so powerful. It was their power that made them powerful. European countries like England, Spain, France, and so on, they didn't just get into power because of racism. They sailed around the world and started colonies and conquered lands because they had the money, power, and technology to do it. I feel like you're kind of putting the cart before the horse here, man bun. Racism and white superiority and culture came after the European nations and their success and conquests, not the other way around.
In a lot of ways, lighter skin is still seen as better in Latinx communities, and can become a self-fulfilling prophecy. Sociologist Margaret Hunter writes in her research, Mexican Americans with light skin earn more money, complete more years of education, live in more integrated neighborhoods, and have better mental health than do darker-skinned Mexican Americans.
You're doing it again, man bun. You're trying to say something happened because of racism, when really you've discovered a trend caused by other factors. If light-skinned Mexicans earn more money, complete more education, live in more integrated neighborhoods, and have better mental health, then I say it's because that group of people earned it. It's not just because of their skin color. You don't make more money and get a better education because your skin is a certain color, you fucking moron. That's done with hard work and determination. And what this trend is really saying is that group works harder, is smarter, and has better mental health. Sorry, but this information you brought up doesn't mean what you think it means.
A 2012 study showed that employers viewed light-skinned Black and Latino job candidates as more intelligent than their darker counterparts. And for those of you who haven't figured this out yet, skin color doesn't determine intelligence. Go ask Bill Nye or Neil deGrasse Tyson, thank you.
Wow, okay. This is more of a chicken versus the egg debate here, trying to decide which one came first. You see, Man Bun here says lighter skinned job candidates are viewed as more intelligent than the darker ones. So I want to ask you guys in the audience about that. Do you think this is done because the employers are all racist and biased? Or is it because lighter skinned people have a proven track record of being smarter and better workers? Real question, what do you guys think? Is it racism or is it track record? Is it people being proven to be smarter and better, or is everyone racist? Because I don't think it's just all because of racism. I think companies would hire whoever the best workers are, and whoever is going to help them make more money, regardless of skin color. And as for that second part of this, I agree. Skin color does not determine intelligence, but there are trends within the races related to IQ. Blacks and browns tend to have lower IQs than whites and Asians. Jews tend to have higher ones as well. And showing us an example of a black and a white scientist doesn't disprove this. There will always be outliers. There can be really smart blacks or really dumb Asians, but this doesn't make the correlation between IQ and race non-existent. Take another attribute, for example, say athletics. Blacks tend to be stronger and taller on average, while Jews are quite the opposite. No one's going to deny that because it's so visually obvious. If you ever seen an NBA game, you know that's why most of the players are black, because they're tall and athletic. But since IQ is in your brain and it's something you can't see, dumbasses like Man Bun here will deny that intelligence is related to race every chance they get, because they can easily get away with it. And they show a picture of Neil deGrasse Tyson and say, hey, look, we have a smart black guy too. Fucking pathetic.
In Brazil, a model named Nayara Justino faced the impact of colorism head-on. In 2014, she entered a competition to become the reigning queen of the Globaliza Carnival, which is televised throughout Brazil. The title had always gone to a woman of Afro-Brazilian heritage, but Justino is black and very dark-skinned, whereas previous winners were traditionally lighter-skinned. Despite that, she ended up winning the competition, only to have her title stripped away after the Brazilian public was up in arms because she was too black to be the Carnival's queen.
So the Brazilians had a beauty queen stripped of her title because she was too black. Sounds like textbook racism to me. Yet, again, we got MTV here defending it, trying to make it sound better by calling it colorism. Gotta save the browns and blacks, am I right? This only goes to show that MTV doesn't really care about stopping racism. They act like they do, but that's not really their aim at all. MTV wants to slam whites as racist and excuse blacks and browns from racism or from doing anything wrong ever. They get a free get out of jail free card because they can blame everything on racism. With all that said, MTV is basically anti-white people propaganda, masquerading around like it's anti-racist and trying to save the world or some shit. Give me a break. If you really cared about stopping racism, you wouldn't defend the Brazilians for being starkly racist. If that's even true, if this is even a true story, I mean, I never know what to believe from this decoded show anymore. Who knows? This claim that Brazilians hated the pageant winner because she was black, that could be fabricated too.
In this instance, the outrage over Justino's skin color came from both white and black Brazilians. She was eventually replaced by Erica Moura, a lighter-skinned woman more in line with the color of previous winners. Colorism. It sucks. This is one way racism and colorism are different. Systems of oppression favor white people, meaning black people can't technically be racist towards other black people.
Well, you heard it here, folks. Black people can't technically be racist to other black people. Except, this technicality is some bullshit. Some bullshit Franny and MTV made up. They're conflating racism with systemic racism. That way they can say white people have the power and are always racist, and black people don't, so they can never be. This also ignores other situations, like a country that's run by blacks in, say, Africa, maybe Congo or Ethiopia or something. I guess if we were there, whites couldn't be racist then. If I lived in Congo, I could never be racist, according to this logic, since whites aren't in power. But that's a whole other discussion. Let's go ahead and assume that MTV is just talking about America here. And, well, I wouldn't even say we have systemic racism here in the States. Certainly not anymore. Maybe 60 years ago, you would have had a case for that, but in this day and age, in 2018, current year, there's no systemic racism against blacks and browns. Sorry, buddy. Sorry, man bun. If you guys got problems, that's your own damn fault. Don't come to me looking for sympathy and handouts. Believe it or not, white people got problems of our own too.
So how do we begin to eradicate colorism from our communities? Let's get to work. It starts with some self-reflection. Sometimes our learned prejudices can take over like muscle memory. So first and foremost, ending colorism means unlearning what we've been told about what beauty and success should look like.
So the first solution is to unlearn what beauty and success look like to you. Not sure how that works, to be honest. How does one go about changing what they think is beautiful? When I look at chicks, I either think they're hot or not, like the app, like that old website. This is a natural thing people do, judging beauty, and it's based on evolution and generations of breeding and reproducing, screwing and having sex. You can't just sit down one day and say, hey, I want to be attracted to black chicks now. It really doesn't work that way, guy. And as for unlearning what it means to be successful or not, I say we're gonna have similar issues with that too. Success is pretty clear. Does the person have a job? Money? Are they well dressed? Do they talk or act smart? You can't just one day out of nowhere say, look, bums on the streets are successful now. It just doesn't work that way.
But it also means breaking the steady stream of whiteness that still dominates Latin American media, politics, and culture. Trust me, I've been working in entertainment for a while and I've seen things.
I wonder if people like this guy or Franny, I wonder if they ever just think about going with the more obvious, more likely answer to these problems. Maybe white people dominate representation in TV and politics because people like them more. This guy is saying we need to think differently, but I think it's you and Franny and MTV you do. You need to stop thinking everything is some racist conspiracy. I know this logic has become commonplace for you. It's old hat now, but for the rest of us, it isn't. You sound like crazy conspiracy theorists to me, like left-wing Alex Jones. Instead of saying the chemicals in the water make the frogs gay, you're saying everything in the world happened because of racism.
Perhaps most important, be conscious of elevating and uplifting voices that break our cultural expectations when it comes to colorism.
So uplift people of color based on their skin color. Your solution to end colorism is more colorism. Brilliant.
Back to you, Francesca.
Ultimately, no one wants to be judged solely based on their external appearance. Whether these judgments come from people who look like you or don't, your skin color shouldn't determine your job prospects, your worth, or your place in society.
It doesn't. And you and Franny and MTV, you are the ones who make everything about race. You can't make video after video about racism year after year and then go and tell us not to focus on people's races all the time. That's what you're doing, Franny. And don't get me wrong either. I mean, I'm all for ending racism too, if that's even possible. But the way Franny and MTV are going about it is counterproductive at best and very toxic at worst. I say we just stop talking about race. If you really want to get down to it, let's end racism Morgan Freeman style. Now I know it seems like I'm talking about race a lot here today, but I wouldn't even be bringing this up if Franny wasn't constantly dwelling on it. In the end, I'm still not sure how colorism is different from racism. In both cases, there was an issue with skin color and it defined the judgments and actions of the individuals involved. So I say, if colorism does exist, it's just a small subcategory of racism. Perhaps you could say it's racism to a lesser degree, but it's still racism. And I'll even give you something. I mean, I can agree that people are biased based on shades sometimes, skin colors. And I understand the idea of calling that colorism, I guess. But I certainly disagree with this video's definition of racism. Racism does not require systemic oppression. Stop confusing racism with institutional racism, or the systemic one. Racism, by definition, is a bias based on race. Anyone can be racist or receive racism. Even people who aren't systemically, historically, or institutionally oppressed, they can still experience racism. And some people are even racist against their own race. So don't give me that bullshit that black people technically can't be racist to other black people, because that just shows how biased and dishonest this show really is. Just like how you excuse Brazilians for their real racism and rebranded it as colorism, MTV is showing their hand a lot today. To them, only white people can truly be racist. Blacks and browns can do no wrong, essentially. It's not even the minority's fault when they don't do as well as whites. It's racism's fault. Basically, Franny and Dakota are vilifying whites while at the same time infantilizing blacks or browns. And all this bullshit needs to stop. Last thing I'll say is about the title of this MTV video. Stop trying to make Latinx a thing, Franny. Latino was a fine word before, and that's not a sexist thing to say. Every time I hear them say Latinx in the show or put it in their title, I cringe hardcore. It's just another made-up word they use to try and control the conversation, and no one's buying it. So just stop. What do you guys think? Is colorism a thing, or is it just a euphemism for racism? And why is it not racism for Brazilians to discriminate based on race? But if Americans did the same thing, it certainly would be called racism. Comment your thoughts on this below, and thanks for watching No Bullshit. See y'all next time.